Hey, first knew that I was lost. I can imagine I went from death to life, alive to death, right there. But it was just immediate. It's amazing things to remember.
This week. Definitely looking forward to it. We missed Sunday. The weather held us off from being able to do that, but glad I will be able to come out to the house of God tonight. I want to go to the Lord in prayer. I want to ask if anybody has a prayer request in your heart you'd like to make known before the church. Anyone at all?
Pray for my lost.
This. Keep them some different ones that we've mentioned that we've reached out to. I know with us Kinslow, we talked a little bit to Maddie and Marcus. I know it's been mentioned a lot here the last few weeks for them, but Maddie said that she actually was able to get some things worked out at work there, and so she should have Sundays off, so they're going to try to start coming on Sundays. So remember them. The weather has been bad, and we'll do that. And maybe this way again too, as we prepare this Sunday. It looks like it might be bad again, but that's the winter. Never know we're going to get in the end, I guess. But just remember them. I'm glad to see the desire that God's placed in their hearts. So just maybe God will use that and give attention to some of their family. God knows what's needed. We just have to be obedient to do what He wants us to do. Someone else?
Alicia Coffey sent me a Facebook message that she's been thinking about us. I told her to come out anytime, bring all the kids. I told her mom had said something, about the youth in Sunday school, that she really missed all those girls. So, so people are thinking about us.
Yeah.
I don't know why they won't go against the norm, I guess, maybe what they think. I don't, why they're afraid to hurt people. I'm not sure, but
yeah.
just keep inviting them.
Yeah. bring the ones in that he wants.
I guess Phyllis and Ray was having some problems.
Bless her heart, I didn't talk to her physically, but she posted that she went in the kitchen and he was trying to cooking 2 eggs, had a paper plate on the stove with 2 eggs on it, going to cook his eggs on a paper
James.
plate. Remembering, God love me, when you start losing your memories, it's not only hard on the person, but it's hard on the caregiver.
Yeah.
God love me.
Keep remembering them in prayer. I send her a text every once in a while and we'll talk. And she really enjoys seeing the services that we've been
Oh,
in. So she's sending multiple, each time one comes out, she'll say, just thank you for whoever's taping them. She's like, it's been a blessing to us. Remember them. So I know they've been trying to get to freedom when they can. So remember them too.
Freedom Eagle closed last Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, I think almost every church around the area did too. So
But we could have had Sunday night service.
yeah.
Keep that in mind.
Keep that in
We can't
mind.
do Sunday morning, we can do Sunday.
Someone else.
I remember Harvey, Benny, I had Morgan said they had to come back to the hospital last night for the kid had a stroke. So I remember him and his health. It's not been very good lately. When we saw him New Year's Eve, he didn't look very good either. So he's trying, but it's really for him.
Yeah, I remember Harvey. It's Shy's Uncle Kevin's dad. He's a good man of God. Been a preacher for a long time. Amazing testimony. He was a minor league ball player underneath the Cincinnati Reds farm team. He was involved in a whole bunch of stuff, and I got a hold of him, got saved, got in church, and became a preacher. He's a blessing to us. He was at the New Year's Eve service in his wheelchair and still praising God, and got carried away a little bit in the wheelchair. So
Amen.
just remember them. So I know they've been going through a lot. I think this is like the 3rd time that they think he maybe had a stroke or a heart attack or something like that in the last few months. So
Wow.
anyone else?
Also, remember my Aunt Val. She's been going through a lot. Her and my uncle they recently got divorced, and just there's been a lot going on with that, and there's a lot going on with it's just really affecting the kids. When we can not greatly, obviously, but so remember them. I don't think Nolan's been in church very much since they separated, and it's not where it needs. So remember them.
Anyone else tonight?
Brother Josh, I'd like to do a praise report. I asked for prayer here a couple Sundays ago for a brother named Don Hanner. He came through that surgery good. His wife said he just came through it fantastic, but they had to do more than they was going to. They was going to do like a double. They ended up doing like a 4 bypass thing, and he came through it just fine color. So praise the Lord.
Anyone else tonight? All have unspoken requests that we don't left in the hand. Paul, would you lift this over in prayer?
Dear Father God, we thank you, Lord, this week to come out for time. Thank you, Lord, for allowing us to worship, Lord. Thank you for everything you've done in our lives, Lord, just bring us together once again, Lord. We ask, Lord, that it's touched, Lord, the different hearts, Lord, that they reached out to you, God. Lord, the ones, Lord, that commit a testimony that will come out, God, Lord, you actually also help them, Lord, that you will do that. God, Lord, just help us church to grow the way you want us to, God. Give us what we say to you, Lord. Help us, Lord, to be obedient in that year. We ask, Lord, that bless our giving home, Lord, having us give an out, Lord. We thank you, Lord, for that. That they were loved, part of God. We ask, Lord, that you know, the ones we talked to this week, Lord, we ask, Lord, man, you reaching out. You just use that maybe to bring them out. That's how we're almost correct. You mentioned, Mike Kinslow, that we talked to, Lord, this year. You just use that plan, see, Lord, you have to help them come out, Lord, thank you for that. Help us, we have a girl church, you know, and encourage us to take care of you guys, everything you're going to do about help our family, bless our home. Yeah, brothers or parents, we'll just be down, Lord, help us go out. Each turn morning, Lord, we ask for this, Lord, down doing your will, Lord, this is a small part of the party. Help their family in their time of need. Help our sister churches, Lord, all they're trying to do, Lord, they stay true. And help us, Lord, just be alive for a long time. Bless us in prayer. We ask for these things. Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
Anybody have anything on your heart you need to say or do for the Lord tonight? May God impressed upon you, right in your heart at all.
Josh, I might have kind of a Bible study if you're Unless you guys have a message.
Downtown, come on.
Turn over to Numbers, chapter 9. First verse here tells us, the Lord spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the first month, the second year after they were come out of the land of Egypt, saying, let the children of Israel also keep the Passover at his appointed season. Anybody remember what else occurred at this point in time? The first month of the second year? I'm sorry? Well, the commandments had already been given. The commandments were given at the same time. Remember when was the Passover? Remember when the Passover?
50 days.
I'm sorry?
50 days.
The Passover. When was the Passover?
Well, it became the first month.
It became the first month, right?
It was the 7th month.
It was the 7th month, and they swapped. God had Moses tell them to swap them. And it was the 15th day of the first month, right? Was the Passover. They held the Passover. Okay, so that's the 15th day, and so that's the next day, if you will, is when they came out of Egypt.
Oh.
So they came out of Egypt at that point in time. And so then after they came out of Egypt, then of course they went across the Red Sea. There was a period of time, and they finally came to the Mount Horeb, which is also Mount Sinai. And they came there, and that was 50 days. That was the giving of the law. So that was 50 days after that was after the Passover. So that, you know, that's how that breaks down there. But then the reason I'm kind of bringing this up is because, you know, we're used to reading books that are in chronological order. This is none of this.
Yeah, that's right.
It could be so confusing trying to study this and you know, because it seems like, well, I thought I read that already. I thought you know, and how does that happen? Well, go to the last chapter of Exodus. It's the 40th chapter. First verse, and the Lord spake to Moses, saying, on the first day of the first month shalt thou set up the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation. Okay, so this is, and then if you go over to the next, and it tells us over here in the 17th, and it came to pass in the first month in the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up. So it had been 1 year since well, it's actually been 1 year minus 15 days since they had left. Okay, so this is the second year, the first day of the first month. So this is the month of Abib, which is the first month, and that's the month that the Passover was held. And so that's when God told Moses to rear up the tabernacle. So it took from the giving of the law there, the 50 days after Passover, they wandered around. Then God gave Moses the instructions for the temple, the tabernacle, all of the furnishings, and it took somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 months to assemble those to make those things, and then get them ready to build the tabernacle. And so now it's been a year, a little less than a year since they left Egypt. And now, in fact, so this is where Exodus leaves off, and then when we go over to Numbers, again, that's where it picks up. So all of the Leviticus and the first part of Numbers, all of those, that was God giving Moses the law and the directions for all of the parts and how they were supposed to, the priests were to conduct themselves. And so now, for all intents and purposes, we've started here after the Exodus. So here, the Lord spake unto Moses in the wilderness in the first month of the second year after they were come out of the land of Egypt. Let the children of Israel also keep the Passover at its appointed season. In the 14th day of this month, at even, ye shall keep it its appointed season, according to all the rites of it, and according to all the ceremonies thereof shall ye keep it. And Moses spake unto the children of Israel that they should keep the Passover. And they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the first month of even in the wilderness, Sinai, according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so did the children of Israel. So now it's been a year. And this is the second Passover that they held. And of course they only hold it once a year. And so God told them, go ahead and keep the Passover. And so they doing this, and so God is instructing Moses. And then in fact it goes on to talk about some men were defiled by a dead body. And since they couldn't take the Passover, it was allowable for them to take the second month, the 15th day. So there could be a second Passover for those that weren't able to keep up with, or to be able to partake, because they were unclean. And so if you go down to the 15th verse there, and on the day that the tabernacle was reared up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, namely the tent of the testimony, and at even there was upon the tabernacle, as it were, the appearance of fire until the morning. So it was always. The cloud covered it by day, and the appearance of fire by night. And when the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle, then after that the children of Israel journeyed, and in the place where the cloud abode, there the children of Israel pitched their tents. At the commandment of the Lord, the children of Israel journeyed.
Where are you at?
I'm sorry?
Where are you at?
I'm sorry. Number 9, chapter 9. I'm sorry.
I just stopped and was gonna listen, I wasn't.
You what?
I just said, okay, I can't find it, I'm still listening.
Oh, okay. No, interrupt me. That's what I'm sorry. I'm back at chapter 9. So chapter 9, in other words, this is where it picks up right after Exodus. Okay? So
Chapter 9. Okay.
in chapter 9 in Numbers is where it picks up right after Exodus. So, and on the 15th verse there, the day that the tabernacle was reared up, the cloud covered the tabernacle. Even there was upon the tabernacles that were the appearance, so it was always the cloud covered it. When the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle, then after the children of Israel journeyed, in the place where the cloud abode, there the children of Israel pitched their tents. At the commandment of the Lord, the children of Israel journeyed, and at the commandment of the Lord, they pitched. As long as the cloud abode upon the tabernacle, they rested in their tents. And when the cloud tarried long upon the tabernacle many days, then the children of Israel kept the charge of the Lord and journeyed not. And so it was when the cloud was a few days upon the tabernacle, according to the commandment of the Lord, they abode in their tents, and according to the commandment of the Lord, they journeyed. And so it was when the cloud abode from even unto the morning, and that the cloud was taken up in the morning, then they journeyed. Whether it was by day or by night that the cloud was taken up, they journeyed. Or whether it were 2 days, or a month, or a year, that the cloud tarried upon the tabernacle, remaining thereon, the children of Israel abode in their tents and journeyed not, but when it was taken up, they journeyed. At the commandment of the Lord, they rested in the tents. The commandment of the Lord, they journeyed. They kept the charge of the Lord at the commandment of the Lord by the hand of Moses. What we're trying to think of how I want to phrase it. What was Moses' job?
To talk to God and interpret God to the people. He was leader of the people.
Okay, I'm sorry?
Lead the people. He acted as a judge.
Okay.
And,
Okay. Okay, what else, anything else?
I mean, I guess you could consider him, I guess, somewhat of a priest in a way, because he was of the Levites. I mean, Aaron was a high priest, and that was his brother, so I would say he had multiple roles or functions that he
yeah,
played.
I'm sorry?
he was the law, well, he was the lawgiver too. Lord gave him the law, then he was the lawgiver to the people.
God gave it to him, and he basically gave it to the people. Is there a position that can we say that Moses was like anyone else? Any other? I mean, what figure? What?
Like a king or something, like an office or?
Well, yeah, well, I guess you could call it. You could call it that. I mean,
Well, like
it's,
our pastor, he's supposed to be leading this flock. Moses was trying to be leading that flock.
well, okay, we're kind of gonna get to that from the standpoint of what actually were the children of Israel following Moses?
No, they're supposed to be following the cloud,
What's the cloud supposed to be?
spirit.
The Holy Spirit. Okay. And so,
Same way with us today.
and same,
We're supposed to be following the
exactly,
Spirit.
the same way with us today. And I
Mark,
guess-
are you getting at it? He was probably Jesus-like?
I think that's probably, if we could compare him to anyone, he probably is representing Christ. Is that fair to say?
I would even say reference the tabernacle as this, but that he was maybe a shadow.
Yeah,
Talk about the shadows.
simile
Moses
of,
played that role, kind of almost like, he wasn't Christ, but he was a shadow, he was the figure.
yeah,
Was he an
simile.
intercessor?
Yeah.
Right, yeah, that's one of the points I was getting to, was yes, an intercessor. But no, but that, I never thought about it like that, but that's a good point, is
Yeah.
that he was serving the, because everything else is a shadow that we're studying here. The tabernacle, everything, the sacrifices, everything, it's all a shadow of Christ.
Well, and you look at the priests, they have to be sanctified to do the jobs that they're given to do, but he was given the task to sanctify the priests. Moses had to take the blood, and Moses had to take the oil, and put it on their ear, and their thumb, and their great toe,
Yeah.
and represent every vessel in the temple. Moses had to go in and do that, just like Christ.
Just like Christ. The
Yeah,
blood.
didn't Moses not want to do that though? Christ always knew what he was gonna do, but Moses at first didn't want to do what he was supposed to do, did he?
I tried to make excuses.
Yeah, he tried to make
He couldn't
excuses.
talk very eloquently,
Yeah,
and.
well, I'm saying that Christ didn't know.
No.
No, that's a good point for difference. You're right. I mean, Moses was a man,
Right.
obviously, but he was still, his position. And again, I'd never thought about that, Tony. That's a good point. Was that it would be as the shadow of Christ.
yeah,
He's not the substance,
Yeah,
but
fact.
he's the shadow of it.
facsimile.
And he's as close. He's probably as close as any man could ever get to Christ. Is that fair?
Well, he was
statement?
one, he didn't,
Oh, yeah.
he's, the,
Well, he talked face to
him.
face.
well, then he didn't see him though, but he was glowing,
Right, yeah. And it appears, once he finally, he was reluctant to take this on. Remember the burning bush and God giving him the job there to go back to Egypt. And, he didn't want to do it. He can't talk very well, speak very well.
Yeah.
And so, but once he finally assumed that mantle, it seems like, I don't know that I can find any place afterwards that he really tries to get out of anything. Other than the fact that he asked God to kill him a few times.
He did get frustrated the one time about the waters of strife, I guess, Meribah, and
When he
should
struck.
have spoke to the rock, but he smoked the rock the second time.
Yeah, exactly. But, is there any other similarities between Moses and Christ?
But Mike, what were we talking about, the mantle? What's the mantle represent, what was that?
The mantle?
The mantle.
Authority,
Of-
like Elijah, his outer coat, that, always think, I don't know, it conjures up the idea of a, pardon?
I always see like
A cloak, well, I think of it as, you know, I don't know, something, you know, oversized shoulders or something, I don't know. You know, but it was basically just, yes, it was what it represented, but what it represented was the authority that he was given. And so when Moses took it,
No, I was just thinking in today's Levitic Jewish customs, their mantle is nothing more than just a scarf that they wrap around them, and it covers their shoulder behind them and down, and just hangs down in front of their garment. Isn't that what a mantle in today's Jewish priest looks like? You don't know? Okay.
I'm not sure, where was the reference from? You said.
Just some of the things that I've read in.
You were thinking that it was more like a shawl?
Yeah. So I don't know.
I don't know for sure what it
But I
says.
think Tina was just wanting what it symbolized,
Okay.
what the power of it means.
Yeah, but it's more like a cloak or an outer covering, it would seem like, because that's what, Elisha got the mantle, got the cloak from Elijah.
The Jewish mantle is a velvet silk cloth that covers the Torah when it is not being used. The mantle is always colorful and festive.
What else, so what does it cover?
The Torah,
The Torah, when it is not being used.
kind of like that scarf on the piano.
interesting.
Yeah, we've been to a couple synagogues and seen that, where they open up the cap and display the Torah, and it's actually a covering, for the Torah. But look up mantles, look up the Hebrew for there when of Elijah or something, and see if we can get a definition of it.
Well, the Catholic priests too, they have that cloth they put around their neck too.
Yeah,
I've
they
seen them
have
do that.
cloth around them.
Yeah.
But what, the Torahs, there were scrolls, and if you've ever seen one of them, I mean, they're huge, quite large. And in the synagogues, they keep them, and then there's a sleeve, if you will, that covers over them.
Is that about the width of a lamb skin?
Probably. The original ones were. I don't know if they still use parchment or not, You find anything on it? Okay. Any other similarities between Christ and Moses?
Well, I think another thing too, I mean, I know it's not chronological, but we're talking in Numbers, and you get to the Numbers, I think the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th chapter when it's talking about the Passover redeemed the firstborn. And we get that confused a lot of times. We think everybody that was there, everybody was clean, but it was actually just the death of the firstborn. If you didn't have the blood applied, that's what was done. The read Hebrews talks about how that we're coming to the assembly of the living God, to a great cloud of witnesses, and to the church of the firstborn. But then you look at what God does in Numbers. He asks Moses and says, number all the firstborn of Israel, and take that number. And he said, now take all the number of the number of all the Levites, and take that. And then he said, okay, now they're going to now be the selected people that I'm going to use to do my will. It's not just the firstborn at this point. And so in order to do that, they have to be redeemed. And so Moses is the one that undergoes and does the process of the redeeming, basically, which is interesting because we know that's like us, right? I mean, Christ did the redeeming, and that's what Moses basically did in that, if you look at that, because now, we've all become kings and priests. And so we have the same authority that the Levitical priesthood had, except that our high priest is, and say if you look at that, Moses being in the office of almost a priest, because he is of the Aaronic, he's brothers with Aaron, of the Levitical priesthood. The only difference is Christ wasn't after the Levitical priesthood. He was after the order of Melchizedek. So, very interesting.
It is, but Christ, he actually was a Levite on his mother's side. So he was a Levite on his mother's side, but he was of Judah on his father's side. So for all intents and purposes, he had yes, exactly. He made up kings and priests, you know, he was the first king and priest, and so, you know, he had the authority to do it because he had the lineage of it to be able to do it.
That thought just keeps growing, doesn't it?
Do what?
That thought just keeps growing.
Yeah.
Kings and priests.
Kings and priests, that's right.
I mean, it encompasses so much.
Oh,
Like, people don't understand how you can have self-control and, you know, all these things, but you look at, God gives you the authority to handle these things. You have every capability. He makes the way of escape. You know, we talked about the fruits of the Spirit, and, you know, temperance is one of them. You know, as a king, you have authority to rule over a nation, and as a priest, you have spiritual authority to handle whatever office that God's given you. That's the same with us. The nation that you're ruling over is this whole body.
this body, that's right, exactly. And that's a full-time job, just doing that.
Yes. Yes.
Come up with it, yes.
Cloak made of fur or fine material, a prophet's garment.
A cloak, okay, so it's an outer, it would,
Made of fur?
Yeah, it could be made of
Fur
fur.
or fine material.
yeah, so it could probably be of, you know, I suppose it could be a lamb's, you know, hide, or, you know, a sheep's hide or something, you know,
John
sheepskin. Yeah, yeah, that's true.
That's true.
So, yeah, it might, you know, that very well may be. I don't know that I've ever, you know, seen anybody or had anybody, you know, kind of picture it or think about it, but it probably would make, something lightweight wouldn't keep you very warm, you know. I mean, it snows over there in, you know, Palestine and Israel, so it gets quite cold.
Oh, I mean, look at Elijah when he's in the cave. What did he wrap himself his face around with when the wind was coming? The mantle. You know, he's covering his face and he's going around the cave.
Okay,
Well, didn't they say what John's clothing was?
I'm sorry?
Didn't they say what John's clothing was? What the line?
It was a leather
Wild
girdle.
Wild. Yeah.
Yeah, he was wearing some sort of animal skin.
Yeah.
You know.
What did an ephod look like?
I'm sorry?
Ephod or ephod, however you want to pronounce that. The
Wasn't it
priest.
just a pointy hat?
Well, no,
I think it was just like a linen cloth, wasn't it?
the ephod, I think the ephod is what he put over. First of all, he had his linen pants and his linen shirt. And I think the ephod was then put over
Was
that.
that the thing with the 12?
That's
That's the breastplate.
breastplate.
Yeah, that's the breastplate that had it had the stones, the 12 stones in it.
So the ephod would go underneath that.
I think the ephod is what he wore.
So almost like a mantle in a way.
No, almost
Well, the
like,
reason I asked that is because didn't Ezekiel have one that God told him to grab and put it in the dirt? And
It was a girdle.
it was a girdle? Okay, I can't remember. And he pulled it back out and it was marred and he said, this is the,
oh, yeah.
you know what I'm talking about?
What is it? What's that?
It's an apron.
Okay.
Jesse?
Yeah, it goes over, you know, it goes over his, I think it goes over his.
Barbecue.
Okay, let's go back to Numbers 9 there. Okay, one of the things, the thing with Christ, any other similarities between Christ and Moses?
He had a staff.
The staff.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
what did David say? Thy staff and thy rod, they comfort me. And that's what God used for Moses to show his power.
Well, Aaron's rod.
Aaron's rod,
Right,
yeah.
yeah. He would hand it to Moses the way I understand it.
Yeah, but if you go read when God calls Moses out of Midian, when he's there, he had one.
Yeah.
And he told him, he said, because there's three things that he started telling him to do there. And one of them was that if you cast this down, you know, it'll turn into a serpent and you can pick it back up again. That's an interesting little chapter 2.
Right.
You can look at it spiritually speaking.
Well, I was thinking about the body of Moses, you know. God hid the body of Moses so they couldn't find it, you know, and for all intents and purposes, the body of Christ, you know, they couldn't find his body either. So, you know, the similarities between Moses and Christ is you know, it's definitely who God set up to be, as Tony said, a shadow of Christ. And so we can look at him and probably find out a lot of the things that maybe some of the other traits.
He led captivity captive.
He led captivity captive, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if you think about it, you know, it's occurred to me a number of times, I've probably preached on it before, about the journey of the children of Israel through the wilderness is you know, it's us. You know, it's our journey today. You know, we're in the wilderness, we're in the world, we're not of it, and we're trying to make it through, trying to follow the Spirit. So all of the similarities that were happening to the children of Israel, the same things are happening to us. And
Wish God would send that cloud and just let us follow the actual cloud.
okay, well, it would be nice if we could
Yes.
see it.
Yes.
You know, because they did have the advantage of being able to see the pillar of fire and the pillar of the cloud, and that's what Moses was emphasizing here, was they didn't do anything without the Spirit leading them. You know, and we should be absolutely the same way. And sometimes, you know, I'm sure that, you know, if they set up camp, and, you know, they, as he said over here, it might be a day, might be 2 days, might be a month, might be a year. I think I've read where one of the longest ones, I think, that they camped in the same place was a couple of years. And so I'm sure the children of Israel, I wonder if their patience, you know, got tried on that too. You know, they wanted to move, you know, but why would we want to do anything unless we're following the Spirit? And that's the whole point, is that if we're following the Spirit, then we're doing God, we're following God. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And a lot of times it would be real easy to get you know, a lot of people try to get ahead of God. And that's one of the, I'm not so sure that might be worse than trying to fall back, you know, and because if you imagine them out there in the wilderness and they're following the cloud, and all of a sudden they decided to go off to the right hand or to the left hand, we're not going to follow that. You know, we're going to go our own way. You know, well, they're going to lose the protection of that cloud by day, and then the protection of the pillar of fire by night.
I would venture to say, though, that they're probably, especially when you read about the cloud, and it says that sometimes it'd be there for a day, 2 days, sometimes a month or a year in the same place, that there were some times they probably got real convenient with them. And that sometimes, I bet that some of them probably didn't realize that the cloud had already taken off. They're still sitting back at camp. But that's just like us, right? That sometimes God tells us to move or do something, and the Spirit comes and tells us it's time to get up and go. But then we're still caught up in our own daily lives and all the things that are going on, and we forget to even follow the pillar. Even that, because it's convenience at that point. You know, we're used to it.
Yep.
So.
You know, Mike, I remember when you taught that night, had your board up there and everything, how they moved through the desert. And you kept getting to the point, and it ended up being a cross.
That's right. When they set up, they were, by this time, I mean, they had been moving through, you know, different parts. I thought it was interesting here in the 11th verse. It says, the 11th chapter, 29th verse. And Moses said unto him, let's see. No, I'm sorry. It's the 11th and the 10th chapter. It says, and it came to pass on the 20th day of the second month, in the second year, that the cloud was taken up from off the tabernacle of the testimony. So, you know, there was a time when they, you know, that they had been there, they had been camped out there for 50 days, and, you know, at this point in time. So, you know, they didn't linger long there. When we get into the 10th chapter there, it talks about the trumpets, and it's actually talking about what Paul's referencing is how they move through. And it's a very organized movement as they're you know, when the trumpet blew, I think it was Judah, the tribe of Judah moved first. Actually, the Ark of the Covenant would be out ahead of everybody, but then the tribe of Judah would move, and they would move in a direction, I can't remember if it was clockwise or counterclockwise, that they would move, and then the temple, excuse me, the tabernacle and the furnishings and everything, all that stuff would be in the middle of the different tribes. But then when they camped, it was very precise. I mean, just, you know, military precision that these guys were, you know, that they were doing.
So if the pillar rested on the ark, of the testimony, that's interesting in a way, because it's talking about the Spirit as a representation of the pillar. But then we know that the Ark of the Testament represents the Word of God. And so those two are synonymous in a way, that if you're going to have the Word of God have any power, any effect, it has to have a pillar. And then when that pillar moves, that the Word of God is going to move with it. So the Word of God is going to, the Spirit is the manifestation of how the Word of God goes out and touches different people. So I think it's interesting that it says that it, there where you're reading that, it gets lifted off the Ark of the Testimony.
Yeah.
So, you know, because I haven't really pictured it like that.
Yeah, it is. It's the little, you know, the details that you pick up, you know, as we're studying it, all of a sudden, and what they mean, you know, it just, I've been going through this several times here the last few days, and it just seems like I picked up so much, you know, every time I studied it and read it. But then, so that's essentially in the 10th chapter, you know, down here at the 33rd verse of the 10th chapter. And they departed from the mount of the Lord 3 days' journey, and the ark of the covenant of the Lord went before them in the 3 days' journey to search out a resting place for them. And the cloud of the Lord was upon them by day when they went out of the camp. And it came to pass when the ark set forward that Moses said, Rise up, Lord, and let thine enemies be scattered, and let them that hate thee flee before thee. And when it rested, he said, Return, O Lord, unto the many thousands of Israel. And then the 11th verse, when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burnt among them, and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. What do you think that's trying to, is there a lesson in that? And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burnt among them, and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. And the people cried unto Moses. When Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire was quenched. And he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burnt among them. The 4th verse, it says, And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a-lusting. And the children of Israel also wept again, and said, Who shall give us flesh to eat? We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes. And the manna was as coriander seed, and the color thereof, the color of bdellium. And the people went about and gathered it, and ground it in mills, or beat it in a mortar, and baked it in pans, and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was as the taste of fresh oil. And when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it. Then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent. The anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased. What's going on here?
A lot of complaining.
Huh?
A lot of complaining.
Complaining? Christians complaining? God's people complaining?
Weren't satisfied with what they read.
Well, in the 78th Psalm, it says that they ate angels' food. That's what this manna was.
Yeah, I've heard
It
that.
came down from God, and God referred to it as angels' food.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting that they never ate that before. They've never tasted it before.
No.
And they didn't have to work for it either.
Do what?
And they didn't have to work for it either.
They didn't have to
They
do
didn't have
it.
to plant
It,
or
it actually
kill it.
it actually started, the first manna came on the 15th of the 2nd month. So that's when the first manna, came to them.
The first year.
I'm sorry, of the first, yes, in the first year. In the first year.
So at this point, they've been eating manna for a year.
Yeah.
I'm tired of it.
Not a Big Mac inside.
Do what?
Not a Big Mac inside.
Yeah, they complained about it, and God gave them quail.
Well, he'd already given them quail. But when he gave them the manna, they gave them the manna in the morning and gave them quail at night. but then he was gonna go on here, and he gave an abundance of quail, you know, we're gonna.
Yeah.
18
Yeah.
cubits from this way and that way, and every which way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very angrily gave him quail. Here's your quail.
Here's your quail. Like, you want quail, here's your quail.
Until
If
they
you
were
read it,
sick
I
of
think
it.
even, I was reading that Psalm 78 the other day, and it talked about all this, you know, the journey they went through and all the things that they did, and how they complained, and it talked about even how as they had the meat in their teeth. So, you know they weren't thankful for it. God's anger, you know, his anger was kindled again because they weren't thankful for even that.
They're out in the middle of nowhere, you know, I mean, it's a desert, there's, you know, there's nothing to eat. There's no place to, you know, if God wouldn't provide the water, they wouldn't have water, you know. And like you said, they're not having to work for it. They do have to go out and gather it every morning and bring it in.
Yeah.
But of course, they can fix it many different ways, you know. I guess you could eat it raw if you wanted to, or you could bake it, or you could, you know, do different things with it. But like I said, after a year, they were just tired of it. And they're complaining about it.
Well, by this time, are all the flocks that went with them gone?
Oh, no. No, they still
They
got,
had the milk of the goats and stuff.
they've got that, you know, I think they're probably doing, you know, sacrificing, they're doing some things, you know, with the flocks, because, well, here, we'll go on and read here.
Okay.
It says, then Moses heard the people in the 10th verse. Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man at the door of his tent. Anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased. And Moses said unto the Lord, wherefore hast thou afflicted thy servant? Wherefore have I not found favor in thy sight, that thou layest the burden of all this people upon me? Have I conceived all this people? Have I begotten them? You know, are they my children? And that thou shouldest say unto me, carry them in thy bosom as a nursing father beareth a sucking child, unto the land which thou swearest unto their fathers? Whence should I have flesh to give unto all this people? For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. I am not able to bear all of this people alone, because it is too heavy for me. And if thou deal thus with me, kill me, I pray thee, out of the hand, if I have found favor in thy sight, and let me not see my wretchedness. What do you think he's saying there? I'm not able to bear all this people alone, because it's too heavy for me. If thou deal thus with me, kill me, I pray thee, out of hand, if I have found favor in thy sight, and let me not see my wretchedness.
Well, I could almost understand there, Brother Mike, you know, he's one person, there's several million people around him. When they're complaining, I can imagine it's a great noise, you know.
I'd just like to be in the middle of 2 million people complaining.
Yeah, I could almost see it.
But yet, our Lord in heaven is looking down on his creation and more than 2 million people, and a handful of them is praising him. Just a handful of them. A remnant, just a remnant. And we, his remnant, how many times are we praising him in a day? Not near enough.
And how much are we complaining? You know, how much are we,
I wasn't going there.
worried. But I mean, you can imagine, as Paul said, you know, here's Moses, he's got to be, you know, I don't need this. He's asking God to kill him.
Yeah.
You know, his wretchedness, he's talking about, you know, he's feeling, he's depressed. He's despondent, you know, and I mean, he just, you know, he's thinking, he doesn't see a way out of this, you know, unless God intervenes.
So God's got to help.
I'm sorry?
God's got to help.
Right.
In the 16th.
But I think a lot of times, too, we give them, the children of Israel a bad rap for the way they acted. I mean, they saw a lot of amazing things, but still turn around and complain and murmur. But we see a lot of amazing things, too, spiritually speaking, and God's saved us from sin and saved us from hell, and, you know, taken us, you know, and made us kings and priests, and anything that the Father has is mine, and all these other things, and yet we try to go play the same way. He may never say you want to go back and eat the things of Egypt, but the way we live a lot of times say that we want to.
Exactly.
You know, they desire to eat the fish and the cucumbers and the leeks, and You know, we desire to still eat the things of the flesh a lot of times, the things that were in the wages of sin back in Egypt. You know, boy, that tasted good. Go and taste of it, but there's no pleasure in it.
Right, exactly.
But you know, Mike, I could see too where God can put the fear into them real quick too, because of that fire on the outermost or the uttermost.
Mm-hmm.
The people in the center, if it's burning on the outside around them, they're in the center.
You'd think so, then they
Yeah.
complain again. They literally get burned up by fire, God quenches it, and then they're complaining like we don't have enough food.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't ever learn a lesson.
No,
We still do the same thing,
that's right.
you know. I mean, you get to a point, they're over, America and Mass over there, they're wanting water. And they ask the question, they said, is the Lord among us or not? Where's he at? I mean, isn't that the way we get? We have the gall and the nerve to say, Lord, yeah, right, where are you at? You don't follow your word, I've done that before.
Yeah, challenge God.
Challenge God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Try to do it with him. You're not gonna win.
No.
It's not.
Just not.
But yeah, you know what? We still go back to
Yes.
it. We've done it, and we challenge him again. We do it, we challenge him again.
Well, from the fleshly standpoint, you could imagine, these people that they've eaten cucumbers and onions, they've had, melons, I mean, they've had an abundance fish, of food, and that would satisfy the flesh, and the flesh, how many, it's amazing. Once you've eaten something, isn't it funny how you can remember what it tastes like?
Yes.
Yeah. Because what happens when you put something in your mouth that's not, you've got this preconceived idea of what you put in your mouth is going to taste like, and when it don't taste like it, these kids try to feed them something that they think that it's what it is that they're, but it's innate, it's in our nature to know that. And so, we go, oh, wait a minute, that's not right. That doesn't, it doesn't have the taste that I expected it to have. But yet our memory allows us to actually go back and, I can remember what that steak tasted like. I can remember what that cake tasted like. I can remember, And so here you've got this whole 2,000, people, that 600,000 adults, men, they can remember what they enjoyed over in Egypt, the flesh. And so, as Josh said, we do give them a bad rap, sometime, but we still have to remember that they're men, they're fleshly men, but they should, and we should, just like them, we should be able to overcome those things, and be able to desire the food of which is what the manna, this is spiritual food. It tasted like fresh oil. What's fresh? Spirit of God. That's right. So it's got the taste. We can taste the Spirit. We can also remember what the Spirit feels like and what the Spirit tastes like.
Crave more of it.
And crave more of it. It's just which part of, is it the inward man or the outward man that we're looking to serve God with the most? What are we really wanting to do with what we've got?
Well, I know back then though they had the cloud, the spirit, but I think a lot of times we're as bad as they are because they probably depend on men to tell them what to do instead of what God, the Spirit, tells them. I think a lot of times we get into the habit and get content. We're in church, we don't listen to God, we listen to what man has to say. I think it's the same way.
That's exactly. We have to always. They were following the cloud.
Right.
Everybody could see it. And if they were doing the right thing, they weren't following Moses.
Right.
They weren't following. They were following the Spirit because the Spirit would deal directly with them. And so, so we don't have an excuse.
But how many times did God give them the opportunity to talk with them? And they didn't want to.
No.
When they were there at Mount Sinai, and they're all there, and God gave them the commandment, you're not supposed to come and touch this part of it, but then God wants to speak to them, and God tells them, come up.
That's right.
And We ain't gone. You go, you're us. You know?
Mountains burning up
Yeah.
there and shaking, the earth
Yeah.
is, I mean, just fires on top of
They
it.
didn't want to do it.
No, it didn't want to happen, that's right.
Moses was willing.
Let Moses do it, let Moses do it. No, that's exactly right. And we're the same way, we're gonna, it's easy for us to follow a man, but we always have to remember that that's not, again, we have the Word, we have God's Word that we can follow, accompanied with the Spirit to let us know, interpret it. And so, we have to be careful, In other words, follow Moses as Moses was following the Spirit. And I thought that thing where about the ones that were burnt, you were talking about that they weren't under the protection of the cloud. They were at the high, the heavenmost, they managed to, they're dragging up the rear, in other words. And so I don't know if they're complaining, I don't know, what it is they're doing, but they were the ones that God was apparently displeased with because he allowed the fire to burn them up. Okay, talking about the manna. Okay, we're over here in the 16th. Let's see. The Lord said to Moses, the Lord said, gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom thou knowest to be the elders of the people, and officers over them, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that they may stand there with thee, and I will come down and talk with thee there. And I will take of the Spirit which is upon thee, and I will put it upon them. And they shall bear the burden of the people with thee, that thou bear it not thyself alone. And say thou unto the people, sanctify yourselves against tomorrow, and you shall eat flesh. For ye have wept in the ears of the Lord, saying, who shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you flesh, and ye shall eat. Ye shall not eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, neither 10 days, nor 20 days, but even a whole month until it come out of your nostrils, and it be loathsome unto you, because that ye have despised the Lord, which is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why came forth we out of Egypt? What can we compare? They're looking back to Egypt. What would be comparable to us?
We turn back to the weak and beggarly things of the world. Once we've tasted
Egypt is,
God,
Egypt signifies sin.
sin, yeah.
So whenever we turn away from God and go back towards sin, no matter what it is, even if it's just a slip of the tongue.
What does it say over in the New Testament? People can get so far away that
They forgot they were once purged from the
So, could it be that these? They're looking back and saying, "Boy, I wish we hadn't left Egypt." Can it be that we looked and we actually regret being saved? Boy, I wish I didn't have this responsibility. Boy,
But they forgot what it was like. They forgot what it was like to be in the hand of the taskmasters, and what it was like when you're being told to make brick without any straw, and to have to keep up. You're getting whipped, and your brothers are dying from the exhaustion and all these things they're doing. They're the ones that cried out to God to be brought out. So obviously they did forget that they were purged, they were redeemed, and so yeah, it's like us. People I've seen a lot of people that way. That the way they live, either they never were saved or they have completely forgotten that they were ever saved in the first place because of the way they live. I think it's so different from them.
so what could we? So they were actually willing to give up their freedom to go back to slavery. That's essentially what they're saying, right? If we hadn't left Egypt, we'd still have all this stuff provided. We could have this food, we could have this, but even though we'd be slaves, that's okay. And that they're surrendering to what's that, Paul?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I'm amazed,
Yeah.
But, I was thinking when Josh was saying, it's human nature for man to forget the bad things and just remember the good. I don't know if we're doing some of that or not, but.
I've never gotten drunk okay?
Yeah.
I mean, never drunk, but people, they get drunk, they get sick, they get miserable, but it's like one of the verses in the Bible says, but yet I crave it yet again, you know, as soon as I get over it, I crave it yet again. So, you forget.
Oh,
the
wretched
misery.
man that I am.
Yeah, you
Well, then,
forget.
one spot talked about where, like dogs that return to the
The
vomit,
vomit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
just get all that nasty junk purged out and go back and look at it.
That says too, it's like a sow. You can clean that sow up, it's gonna go right back to the muck and the mire, because that's what it does. It never likes to be cleaned up, it likes to romp around.
It's nature.
Yeah, that's what it likes.
That's right.
And he likened to us unto a dog and unto a sow that would do that.
Yeah.
Well, that's our fleshly body that's
Flesh,
desiring.
yeah, human nature, flesh, yeah.
So, were all of these Israelites saved people? Well, if you're living in the midst of, whole midst of sinful people, it's hard to hold your walk.
But also-
Harder.
Yeah. Also, you gotta remember too, they were in the wilderness for 40 years. You know, remember when Joshua sent out the spies, they returned back and Joshua and Caleb were the only two. Yeah, they came back, but God had said, you tempted me these 10 times.
That's right.
He was talking about all the other 10 spies that didn't give a good report. And so they wandered in the wilderness. God gave them clothes. He said their foot didn't swell. I mean, I don't know if their shoes grew with them or what, because there were kids that were born. And so remember, all the ones that were what?
20 years.
20 years and
Young.
under.
Yeah.
Unless they were
They,
Levites.
unless they were Levites.
Right.
Unless they were Levites, they got to go over to the land of Canaan.
Right.
Everybody else died.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people that was. There were a lot of people that died in the wilderness.
It would have been 2 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so to your question about where, God didn't allow them to go. Even Moses didn't get to go. He took them up to the Mount Pisgah and said, I'm going to let you see what it looks like, but you're not going to get to go in. And you read over there, it said his natural forces were not abated, nor were his eyes dimmed. So he was in perfect health.
Yeah.
But God did not allow them to go. It was time for them to get over there, and he said, you're not going, because you smote the rock and you didn't speak to it. That's the same way with Christ. You know what we do? We smite Christ. We try to crucify him again, and we need to speak to him. That's exactly what we need to do.
That's right.
How do we try to crucify him?
Sinning again, trying to.
Yeah.
I mean, what
There's no
did
more-
Paul say? He said, if you sin willingly, there's no more sacrifice for sin. Christ was crucified once, and he can't be crucified again.
No. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that verse, I was thinking, that was the one you just quoted.
Right.
So we try to resurrect the old man.
That's right.
And God said that when he saved us, that we were created a new man, we're a new creature, old things are passed away, behold, all things are become new. But we try to constantly, this flesh wants to resurrect that old man of sin, and we try to do things that we know we shouldn't do. We try to lust after things that we shouldn't lust after. You know, so, and the Bible says that the pleasure of sin is just for a season. Only lasts a little, it's only good for just a little bit, and then you're going to pay for it. And you're going to pay for it in this life. You're not going to be able to live however you want, and do whatever you want. People say that, I got saved, I don't have to live close to God at all. I don't believe that one bit.
No.
I just don't.
You don't have to, but you're going to miss it.
You're going to
That's right.
Yeah, you don't have to. God's not going to make you. But if you're saved by the grace of God and truly want to follow Him, He puts a desire in your heart to want to serve Him and live close to Him. And so, therefore, you need to try to not go after the things of the flesh, but lust after the things of the Spirit.
No, that's right. So he's setting aside these 70 men. He's given them all this quail. In the 21st verse, and Moses said, the people among whom I am are 600,000 footmen. And thou hast said, I will give them flesh that they may eat a whole month. Shall the flocks, this is to answer your question, Shall the flocks and the herds be slain for them to suffice them? Or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them to suffice them? And the Lord said unto Moses, Is the Lord's hand waxed short? Thou shalt see now whether my word shall come to pass unto thee or not. So here's Moses. This is kind of interesting because here's Moses questioning God. We're gonna have to kill all the flocks, and where's all these fish? How are we gonna come up with this? But yet, even though he's willing to question God, here in the 24th verse, and Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and gathered the 70 men of the elders of the people, and set them round about the tabernacle. And the Lord came down in a cloud, and spake unto him, and took of the Spirit that was upon him, and gave it unto the 70 elders. And it came to pass that when the Spirit rested upon them, they prophesied and did not cease. But there remained 2 of the men in the camp. The name of the one was Eldad, and the other was Medad. And the Spirit rested upon them, and they were of them that were written, but went not out into the tabernacle, and they prophesied in the camp. And there ran a young man and told Moses and said, Eldad and Medad do prophesy in the camp. You can't wait to go out and tell them. These men are prophesying here in the camp. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of Moses, one of his young men answered and said, My Lord Moses, forbid them. And what does Moses say? And Moses said unto them, Enviest thou for my sake? Would God that all the Lord's people were prophets, and that the Lord would put his Spirit upon them. And Moses gat him into the camp, he and the elders of Israel. Okay, what do you think that's synonymous with?
It's like the Spirit will, I know the Spirit dwells within us, but I believe it will come upon us and allow us to testify, to preach, do those type of things. The Lord wants us to sing a song, the Spirit's a song. And I think that represents those men. Prophecy, what is it? It's testimony, right? Of Jesus Christ. So I think part of that was, it works the same way it does within the church today. God's Spirit will anoint people to do things for Him within the service that will help others. It will, again, going back to the Corinthians, it will edify the church. It will edify one another.
From a pastor's perspective too, I think, with Moses, we were talking, I know you mentioned that, I don't feel like a pastor's on any level of Moses, but, it talks about, Peter talking about how, the duty of the it doesn't really say under shepherd, but he said that chief shepherd shall come, so your duty is to elders to feed the flock. And I think when Joshua's over here, it's interesting that he says, forbid them, tell them not to do that. But how many people don't want to hear anybody else preach but their favorite preacher, or the pastor, or teach other than a certain one? I think it was a relief for Moses to see somebody else finally follow the Spirit of God. Thank the Lord. Somebody finally listened.
What do you think? That's exactly right.
Yeah.
God's finally giving him some relief, so to speak.
He said how did he word it? Now all the people with the Spirit would rest upon them, and that they would be able to do that. He said that with God that all the Lord's people were prophets, and that the Lord would put His Spirit upon them. With an exclamation point. If they all could do that, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
What do you think this equates to?
Church service. I can see it. The pastor's preached his heart out, and then the Spirit has touched other people in the congregation, and the Spirit is just going all over.
We got any other place where there's an outpouring of the Spirit?
Yeah, when the disciples, when they were in Jerusalem, and they were talking in tongues to the 2,000, 3,000
The day of
people.
Pentecost.
Yeah.
And I think this is what, and if you kind of do the math, it doesn't give you the exact, but it looks like, just looking at the timeline, here, that this is probably lining right up with the day of Pentecost. And because it is the outpouring of the Spirit, it's exactly, and it's what God wants. He wants His Spirit to rest on all of His people. And that we'd all be in tongues, that prophets and
Well,
testimony.
it's interesting choose
Christ actually,
Christ.
yes, designated, he appointed 70 to go out, you know, 2 by 2, remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And what did they say when they came back in?
Don't know.
About the devils being subject to him, and,
Yep,
yeah.
yeah. And what did Christ tell them?
That you should, I mean, basically,
Prayer
you
and
should,
supplication.
no, that basically you shouldn't rejoice that you're set, that you have authority basically over devils and different things. You should rejoice that your name's written in the Lamb's Book of Life.
As in heaven, yeah, exactly. You know, Christ said he saw Lucifer fall from the sky. Yeah, so don't worry about the fact that you could, you know, these 70. I mean, they were amazed that the devils would be obedient to it. They could cast out devils. They could, you know, all these things. And Christ is saying, that's not the miracle.
No.
You know, the miracle is your salvation.
To have people rejoice in the work that they do for the Lord, thinking they're doing something.
That's right.
Like, I'm doing nothing.
Well, when their testimony starts with I, there's a red flag.
But I mean, men lift other men up in that capacity too, you know, to the extent of, well, you know, there's some people that God's really blessed to have a certain spirit to preach, or the delivery may be different than what I'm used to, or anything like that, and boy, it really, you know, maybe have an effect on different people, but that's why God calls, you know, different men, is, you know, each one has an effectual door that's gonna be different than the other.
Right.
But, you know, we lift up the man, we lift up what God's doing, and, you know, but some men get to the spot where they start, you know, listening to that.
That's right.
Well, yeah, maybe I do have a special gift.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
That's right. No, you're not special.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where they didn't expect Moses, you know, with Eldad and Medad, you know, in the 70. If
They
you
thought he'd be mad about
yeah, exactly.
it. Incensed.
Yeah, they figured that he would be mad about it. Yeah, because this is, wait a minute, you know, he called them. See, Eldad and Medad were part of the 70, but they didn't come out to the tabernacle. You know, they stayed where they were at. So, but that's okay. The Spirit can reach you wherever you're at, and you can testify wherever you're at. God's power is able to do that and get you there.
It's kind of funny though, the next leader though, I'm assuming Joshua, the same Joshua that was going to lead them later, told him to forbid that. You know.
Yeah.
He
But
was
again,
lying.
I mean, yeah, Joshua had a lot to learn.
oh, that's exactly the point.
Yeah, and it's the same way with us. We have a lot to learn. I mean, he had a lot to learn, because remember, when they had crossed over, and, you know, when Achan had taken over the curse from him, and, you know, there was no power with them. And all of a sudden, there was